Hey everyone, it's Alyssa. I hope you're doing well. I have some books to catch up on. I haven't shared with you, like a reading wrap up for a little while. So I have 8 books that I want to talk about in this video. But before we get to the books, I want to say thank you to Alex from What Page Are You On for the shout out. That was so kind, and I'm really grateful for the several of you that have come and joined my channel since then. Thank you for taking a chance on me because of Alex's recommendation. He has great taste in books, so I'm glad that you trust he has great taste in booktubers as well. Please say hi in the comments, please stick around. I hope you enjoy my channel. And also want to say thank you to the longtime subscribers as well. All of you have tipped me over the edge of 500 subscribers, and that was like a really cool moment for me. So thank you for watching my stuff. So let's get to the books. I have, like I said, 8 books to talk about. I'm gonna put timestamps for the reviews down below if you want to just skip around for them. I'm gonna keep it short. Let's get straight into it. First, let's start with The Picture of Dorian Gray. Is it the picture? It is the picture. I keep on saying the portrait. It's The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This was one of the 2 books on my list of books I should have read in high school, which is just a list I've made for myself of books that I feel the need to read for the sake of being informed rather than being really interested in the content. So that being said, that is the same reason I picked up this book, and all things considered, I enjoyed it a lot more than I expected to. What this book is about, if you don't know, we have Dorian Gray, who is a very young, innocent character, and Lord Henry and Basil, and all 3 of these men are in the society stratosphere of London in the late 1800s, and Basil is an artist and he paints Dorian Gray's portrait, and Lord Henry is a man who thinks he's very wise who isn't, and gives advice to Dorian Gray that ends up being very morally not the best. And Dorian Gray's, the effect of his bad and immoral choices are represented in his portrait that was painted by Basil rather than on his person. So he becomes a perpetually or immortally beautiful young person that doesn't really have the consequences for his bad actions. Obviously, there are some moral lessons in this, some moral overtones, more than undertones really. But what I loved about this book was the writing of Oscar Wilde. He's quite perceptive and witty, and he has these observations of human behavior, and especially like the things we tell ourselves that sort of make us convinced that we're not actually the bad guy or that we haven't really done something wrong when we have. I think that some of the best of these come out in Lord Henry, who is this character who has these sort of little insights on life that sound so wise and so articulate, like he really knows what he's talking about. But as time goes on, we realize that he is not really someone who should be trusted with these things, and like he sounds smart but isn't actually that wise. All of these characters were kind of fun to watch, especially Dorian Gray just like descend into madness. Altogether, this book is short, and if you haven't read this classic, I think it's worth your time. I think I gave it, with time, like I think it's sitting at about a 4 to 4.5 for me right now. The next book I read is Lord of the Flies by William Golding. Obviously, this one is also from my list of books I should have read in high school. This book is about a plane full of young boys, about 14 to 7 or so, who find themselves stranded on an island. This is like during World War II, and this is about how they get on, left alone on an island, the way that they sort of govern themselves. This book, more than anything, just felt like a thought experiment played out to me. We're also watching these boys slowly descend into madness as well. I can sort of get the point. I think my ultimate thought coming away was that like I understood what the author was trying to do, and considering this text inside of its time period, contextualizing it, I think I could give it a bit more merit, but I think its biggest fault is that it wholly missed its target demographic with me, and I just found it very hard to care about these children. I just couldn't relate to them very much. I didn't understand their motives. I think I came away understanding why this is a book common in high school classrooms, and perhaps it's a good conversation starter for these kinds of moral and philosophical conversations, but that this book was not, for me, the best kind of vehicle to deliver or provoke those kinds of thoughts and philosophical conversations, and maybe this is better for the target demographic of teenage boys, but didn't work super well for me. I think I give it 2 stars. The next book that I read is Americanah by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. She is a Nigerian author, and this is her most well-known book, I think. We follow Ifemelu, who is Nigerian and comes to study in the United States, and she lives about 10 years here. This book is not told in chronological order. We begin as she's just leaving the United States to come back to Nigeria. And here she studied in school. She started a blog about the Black non-American experience in the United States. And just before she leaves, or just as she's returning to Nigeria, she's reached out to Obins, her high school and college before leaving Nigeria boyfriend, who she lost contact with but was obviously the love of her life. So that's what this book is about, and this whole setup I think is enhanced by the fact that I believe the author had the same experience of coming from Nigeria and studying in the United States, and there's so much what feels like possibly anecdotes from the author's life in this book, as well as like the blog that Ifemelu has provides these like short essays on social commentary on racism in the US, and it's such an interesting third-party perspective of the non-American Black experience. I thought this book had some very interesting insights to human behavior and racism, and it was really cool to read about my country from this perspective. I found it really informative in that way. The characters are amazing. Oh my gosh, the characters felt so real, and this is a long book. I was so sucked into it and I read it pretty quickly. If anything about this sounds interesting to you, I think this book is so worth your time. I really, really enjoyed it. I think it is very, very well done. In the end, I give this book 4 stars. I think it's great, and you should definitely put this book on your list to read if you have not already. The next book that I have to talk about is Home Fire by Shamsie. This book was listed for the Booker last year, was it? Or 2 years ago? I can't remember. I'm really behind the time on this one. Home Fire is a contemporary novel with an all cast of Muslim characters in modern day London. We have 2 families, a father and a son, and then 3 siblings, an older sister and then 2 younger twins siblings. These characters all become involved as the story goes along, but this book is really about being sort of torn between your family and your religion, and having sort of a struggle, a difficult relationship with your religion as well and your culture. These characters all fall on a gradient from being very devout in sort of an acceptable way to being radically devout, and one of the characters joins ISIS. Then on the other end, the father character is the Home Secretary of the UK. His rhetoric, his public rhetoric, is very much follows the narrative of encouraging assimilation and suppressing your culture in order to adapt more to the UK. And this whole cast is also very much living in a society that is not radically accepting of their culture and religion. I enjoyed this book more the longer it went on, in part because of the way that the story was told, which really threw me off and wasn't something I loved at the beginning, but in the end it ended up being so much more impactful. And that is that the story is told in chronological order, but it has 5 sections, and each section is the narrator is one of these 5 characters, but we only get their perspective for that section of the story. And this technique leaves you questioning characters' motives until you get to the section of the story where they are able to explain themselves, or be able to hear things from their perspective. It's hard for me to describe my emotional experience with this book because I think that I wasn't entirely emotionally captivated. The book, you feel a little bit emotionally removed from all of the characters, but you also, like, I couldn't put it down. It was very interesting. I would not have been able to articulate to you in the moment why this was a page turner for me, but I also couldn't put it down. And the ending of the book, I felt like the author stuck the ending. I think that it's a little controversial, like not everybody loved the ending, but I thought it worked great. This book is a retelling of Antigone by Sophocles. I think that's correct. And I did not know that before I read the book. After finishing the book, I watched some reviews which then informed me of that, and I also remembered that I actually did know that back when this book was getting a lot of hype, and I had totally forgot about it. So I mention this only to say that it's not necessary to know. Like me, I enjoyed the book anyway, but I very much recognize like that now, being aware of this, I think that the experience of reading this book could have been dramatically increased if I had made it read along with the book the actual Greek tragedy. Maybe picked up on some of the commentary that the author was making by choosing to adapt it to modern day London Muslim families. So I think that that could have enhanced my experience, but I'll just throw that out there just so you know, in case you didn't know. And the last two books that I have to talk about, I will just briefly mention because I have full reviews of them already up on my channel, and these are both of Brit Bennett's novels, The Vanishing Half and The Mothers. So first, The Vanishing Half has been very popular. I'm sure that you know what it's about. I loved the themes of these sort of female relationships. I loved how these small choices had such big impacts. The author introduces so many different angles to explore the same themes of identity and racism. I think she does a great job. This book has had a lot of praise. I think it's a good book. I think the author is really talented, but I think that right now the hype is getting pulled a little bit farther because of how timely it is, which is unfortunate because a book about racism should not be timely anymore. So I think this is a really good book from a Black author to explore these kinds of ideas. I think she does it with a lot of empathy and with a cast of characters that have a lot of different angles, and I think it's really well done. This is a good one. However, I also mentioned this in my review, The Mothers I enjoyed even more. This is actually the author's debut novel. I definitely think that The Vanishing Half is a more accomplished work, but the themes and just something about The Mothers worked for me a bit better. I love female relationships. This one is a cast of 3 characters. We have Luke and, oh, now I can't remember their names. We have Nadia and Luke and Aubrey, and Nadia and Luke have a summer romance and end up pregnant, and she quickly decides to abort the baby, and this book is about that decision. It's also about the unlikely friendship between Aubrey and Nadia and how they bond over their motherlessness, the way that their mothers have individually abandoned them in sort of different ways. Nadia's mother committed suicide just before the book starts, and so she feels abandoned from her mother in that way. And that dynamic actually was really, really interesting to me, as Nadia was the unexpected pregnancy that her mother chose to keep. So you have this really interesting sort of dynamic as Nadia has just lost her mother and found herself pregnant, and having sort of made the same mistake that her mother chose, but chooses to take a different path. And there you see sort of a similar theme of diverging paths, sort of alternative realities, of parallel stories that take these diametrically diverging directions. You know, that's a similar theme to the twins in The Vanishing Half. This book is also really enhanced by being set in California, but with the backdrop of a Christian community. And so you have this abortion and these topics of suicide that have just some extra complexity added to them, as all of these characters know each other because they go to the same church. Interesting layers of how these controversial topics are so easy to sort of get into political discussions on and to write your banners and go and protest, but then when they're actually happening to you, they become so much more complex and difficult subject matters, and the author does a great job of discussing these things. I really liked this book. I thought it was tight, it's a bit shorter. I like the way that things wrap up well in the end. I liked it. Yeah, I gave this one 5 stars, and if you want to hear any more about either of those 2 books, go check out my reviews. That's all the books. I think that's everything. I tried to keep these short and sweet, but it's hard to like keep your thoughts all condensed. Books, there's so much to books, to like boil them down to a few minutes of review is ridiculous, but we try. I don't know why, but we try. So if you have read any of these books and you have thoughts you want to, and you have thoughts, share them down below. I'd love to get to know you, especially any of you new subscribers. share yourself and your thoughts down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in another video. Bye!